Today we're going to talk about how to identify alkanes, the simplest of organic compounds. We need to be able to do this because this is the basis of being able to name and identify more complex compounds. Our success criteria is to be able to name and draw unbranched alkanes. So an alkane is the simplest version of a hydrocarbon, and it's the simplest version because it only contains carbon and hydrogen, and it only contains single bonds. Each carbon is linked to the next carbon by one single bond. And that means anytime that the carbon isn't connected to another carbon, it's connected to a hydrogen. So each carbon in an alkane is connected to between 0 and 3 hydrogens, unless it's methane, in which case you have one carbon connected to 4. And exactly how many hydrogens it has depends on how many carbons it's attached to. Like the terminal carbon right here in this pentane, right at the end, is connected to one carbon and 3 other hydrogens. But then we have another one here in this methylbutane that is actually connected to 2 carbons because it has a branch and a single hydrogen. And then we also have dimethylpropane right here, where our central carbon is connected to 4 other carbons, and it has no hydrogen connections. And you can see from this diagram that you can have some alkanes that are just straight chains, and you have others that have branches off of them. Right now, we're just going to focus on the straight chains. We'll get to the branches in the next lecture. So, when we are naming simple alkanes, what we need to do is we need to count up how many carbons there are in the chain. So for this very first one, CH4, up in the top left corner, we have 1 carbon here. Well, 1 carbon is going to give it a prefix, kind of like when we're naming molecular compounds, but the first 4 prefixes are actually different. For 1, we use meth. For 2, we use eth. 3 is prop, 4 is but, and then they start to sound more familiar. 5 is pent, 6 is hex, 7 is hept, 8 is oct, non is for 9, and dec is for 10. The suffix that we will use at the end of the name indicates how many single bonds there are in alkanes. And alkanes all use the suffix ane, ane, which is the exact same suffix that's actually in the name of the group. So alkanes, which have single bonds, end in ane. So for our simple unbranched compounds, CH4 is methane, C2H6 is ethane, C3H8 is propane, C4H10 is butane, C5H12 is pentane, C6H14 is hexane. Now this only applies to these unbranched versions. These ones with the branches in red we will deal with in the next lecture. For Chemistry 30, you need to memorize the first 10 prefixes. And of those, the most common ones will probably be 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. We don't deal with bigger single branch chains than that typically, at least not with naming, and any organic chemist that is dealing with them is likely going to use reference material to find out what the prefixes are anyhow.